Welcome to Bold Encounters. Does putting constraints on yourself actually help or hurt your career success? It actually helps. It helps to put constraints on yourself.
Everything you go through is just, another building block for whatever you're about to do next. And if you approach everything with enthusiasm, that will typically have another crack. At any given day, you can wake up, it's a new day, and you can have another crack at being alive and approaching things differently and with a different attitude. And you can reinvent any day. And it's like any, I think, good entrepreneur, I found a way to marry the requirements of the business with my personal boundaries. And where we arrived at was I've now got a really supportive IR team. And the irony is I've actually raised far more money since I set that boundary than I ever did before. And that means letting people know. Setting boundaries isn't just a personal deal with yourself. It's also, you crystallize it by expressing that boundary to the folks around you. In my case, it was a board of directors that I was still getting to know. It was being on stage during sound check with a band that, being certainly in my orbit my whole life, the soundtrack to so many things, just a special memory that, it's hard to articulate.
We all like to be free, but putting constraints on yourself is the answer. The Josh Simons, and a successful music executive, used to be a star, rock singer, we're going to talk about that in a minute, has brought to us today. He's going to talk about his secrets to career and life success. How are you, Josh?
I'm good. That's very kind, Mark. I would never describe myself as a star, but I'll take it. I'll take it on this Thursday morning.
Well, let's clear that up. Oh, by the way, he lives in Melbourne, Australia, and I tried to say that right. It is totally different. It's nighttime where I am. It's morning where you are. So we're doing this across the ocean, across the planet. It's amazing, isn't it?
It's great. I love it. It never gets old. I tell you what does get old is I have staff in Europe, America, here in Australia and Southeast Asia, and working across sort of 3-4 time zones definitely gets old.
The airplane gets old. They haven't figured out how to teleport you yet. That's true.
No, not yet.
All right, let me ask. Let's talk about what you just talked about. Let's clear this thing up because I need to do some fact checking. I researched you a lot. We've talked once before, but I didn't get to ask you all the questions that came up in my research. You have toured as a lead singer for Buchanan between 2009 and 2019. So pretty recent. And then you switched to all the amazing business and tech success that we're going to talk about. But you have toured not only as a big name yourself, but with some other huge names. Tell me who you toured with and opened for.
Yeah, Buchanan toured with Keith Urban and Carrie Underwood. That was our big one that that was actually our last tour as a band. As a musician, I've toured also with Coldplay, but that wasn't with Buchanan. That was with another project. Well, no, I was playing guitar and an artist that Vampr, one of our products, signed, and the artist needed a guitar player, and I offered to fill the void. But that was
tough call.
Well, you know what? I hadn't played a show in 8 years, and I thought a good comeback gig might be the biggest tour of all time. And so we did 11 shows and played to like nearly 1 million people or something. So it was pretty big. That was last year. That was this time last year.
My word.
Yeah, that was the biggest tour. But before that, we'd done arenas and with Keith, and that was amazing. And on top of that, we also toured. I'm just trying to think back to it. We toured Australia about 7 or 8 times, like nationally. So altogether, I've done hundreds of shows, and there's I miss it sometimes. But what I do now is like touring, a kind of marathon that that I get just as many, if not more, air miles now than I did back then.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we leave all of this stuff, I've got to just ask the starstruck, stupid questions that everyone's wondering. You stand on a stage with Coldplay? Tell me about that for a minute. Hey, just a few seconds. As a premium member, you make a difference, not just a buck. Now you can give the gift of Bold Encounters Premium to someone else who you think could do the same. It takes just seconds at boldencounters.tv. Think of one person, a founder, a young adult, some person that you've helped mentor, raise, a leader, or even the chief executive. Give them the gift of weekly action plans with experts right by their side. Give them clarity and confidence to remove roadblocks and lead life's work just like you do. Go to boldencounters.tv and give the gift of premium to someone you care about. Thank you for making this all possible, and we'll see you soon.
Well, the most magical memories I have from that weren't actually when we were playing the show in front of the crowd. It was being on stage during sound check with a band that had, been certainly in my orbit my whole life, the soundtrack to so many things. And we're just sort of standing all there together, everyone sound checking, and they're playing some new songs, and that was just a special memory that it's hard to articulate just how cool that is, and how intimate that is. It's not something that you share online. It's obviously there's a lot of security reasons for that too, but it's just a very beautiful private moment. And I was very lucky. My wife was actually helping as unit photographer for the act that I was touring with. So she was able to share. She was able to share that moment with me. So it was just a very very special. And I had members of the crew come out from England, and it was kind of just a full circle moment for me personally, in lots of selfish ways, but it was very cool.
Wow. Okay, let me ask you just two more fan questions. First, Keith Underwood and Keith Urban and Carrie Underwood. Really? Like, what? Tell me what that is. I know you just said generally you can't talk about it that much, but tell me about those two and being with those two acts.
That one was interesting, because my music that I made sounds more like Coldplay than it does country and those guys. But we had done like a TED talk. My band had done a performance and a speech about 6 months or a year earlier, and I think Keith Urban's personal trainer had seen the video and just loved the energy, and he showed it to Keith, and Keith was like, and Keith told me this story. So he kind of grabbed me backstage and we had a hug, and he's like, we could have hired a more well-known artist, which is true. But we saw this video and we just loved it and wanted to give you that break. And for that, I'm just forever grateful. It's one of the, it's got to be top 3 highlights of my life. Fronting that, because I was the front man of that band as well. It was, that was my childhood dream. And I did, there's this well-known arena in Australia called Rod Laver Arena. It's like our Madison Square Garden. And the first show I ever saw, I was 14 maybe, or maybe younger, maybe 10. I don't know. I was sort of between 10 and 14. And it was actually a Coldplay show, funnily enough, again, full circle. And they were doing 2 nights there, and then I was like, I want to do that one day. That was like when I first felt that pull to music. And it was, about 12 years later that I was doing it myself, and we played 2 or 3 nights there. So that was just a very emotional experience for me, and just so freaking cool.
So cool. Okay, one last question. This is going to date me a little bit, sadly, because they're so amazing. But I loved U2. I grew up in that era. Everyone loved U2. They were the Coldplay before Coldplay.
Yeah.
And they did something interesting to me. I went into a city with my son, and it was too late to get to the show. It was too late to buy tickets. They were sold out, and a 60,000 person venue. And so I said, I'm taking my oldest teeny little son, and I'm gonna go sit on a blanket outside the arena. Well, I wasn't the only one, obviously. I thought I was gonna be the smartest guy in the world. I'm sitting there with all these people, And it was the sound check, just like you mentioned. I mean, we
Yeah.
were way early because we wanted to get a spot and make
Yeah.
sure we could, and
Yeah.
had lunch and stuff. And all of a sudden, I hear him on stage doing the sound check and warming up. And I could not believe how serious they were. Like Bono was telling everyone what to do technically
Yep.
with the equipment, and
Yep.
they were conversing about each other's performance and telling each other what to do. They weren't just like warming up the instruments, they were still practicing in a concerted effort style. Is that what you experienced with all three of those bands, and is that what you did? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think most young bands do that, because when you're a young band, you don't have the best touring rigs. You don't have, with respect, sound engineers who have tuned the sound in all these different larger venues. Or you can, but you pay an extra price for someone who's done that. Usually, bands like to travel with their resident sound guy, and usually emerging bands are used to playing rooms from 500 people to a few thousand, and so suddenly you're doing a support act in an arena or a stadium. It's just a different um, task for a sound engineer, and then sometimes you're getting what's called a monitor engineer as well, who's just sending the sound to your ears, so not what the audience hears, but what you hear. So there's a lot of anxiety from the band's perspective to get all of that right, because sound check is usually like 15 minutes long. The main act usually gets an hour, but it depends on the work ethic of the main act. What I'll say is with all of those bands, probably the coolest one, in terms of watching just how dedicated to the craft of and musicality, was probably Keith Urban. He had his guitar tech standing, side of stage, and they'd run through songs that they've probably played 2 or 300 times live, and Keith would hear something and go, "I don't think this is the right guitar for it," or like the timbre, which is created by the wood and the strings, right? And he's playing in an arena, so by the time there's a crowd, by the time it's played loud, no one's hearing any of that, but for him, he's hearing it, and actually Chris Martin was the same with his piano. So Chris's piano is MIDI, which means it's he's playing it, but other sounds are coming out because it's you don't mic a piano on stage. It just anyway. But because he's playing it and he can hear the actual real piano underneath it, he has to have a piano tuner travel with him to make sure it's always in perfect tune, even though he's the only one that can hear it. So
Steve
both
Jobs of music or something.
yeah, well, it's yeah, there's that sort of like it has to look beautiful on the inside type thing. Um, and so that both of them had that sort of care and attention to detail when it came to their primary instrument, which, when you watch that up close, is just A, fascinating, and B, really makes you respect them as a musician and respect them even more. I mean, obviously, you respect them anyway because they've done what they've done, and but it was just so cool to see that.
Yeah, it really affected me. I got over the perfectionist fear when I listened to that. I thought, oh, this whole idea like, well, I'm not perfect, I should be depressed. Forget it. Those guys are reaching for the moon every second. I could tell. I listened to them do it, and they were already big stars. They had a huge, expensive stage. It was very impactful to just hear them act that way before they open up. How did Buchanan, my last follow up, but how did Buchanan handle the pre-show?
Super seriously. Yeah, sound check for me is the most important part of the day. And then the ritual between sound check and the show, which is really an exercise in energy management and calming down, centering, vocal warm-ups, lubricating everything that's going on inside the throat. Uh, Especially for the front person who's moving around more than the other members of the band and has to worry a bit more about, which foot goes in front of the other and which chord to avoid, and making sure all the various wireless packs that are attached to your body uh, you know, are with you. And yeah, I took all that stuff extremely seriously. I cared about it and still do immensely. Uh, yeah, there's something very special about preparing for showtime. It's very
Yeah.
hard to explain it.
It feels like you've taken that into your other work,
Yeah, I
haven't
have.
you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like a football player. Like I wasn't in the NFL like you were in music or anything, but when you play football, you remember it from your youth and even high school or college. Just preparing and the moment you go out to do it is just really serious and it's magical because it's serious,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
funny, because life is short and then you die and it doesn't really matter any of this stuff. But I love that it matters. I remember once at like school camp or something or an excursion, there was like a dress up like who done it type activity, like like a murder mystery type game or something that the camp played. I remember I sort of just this is when I first realized I was a leader. I would have been like 10. And I
Yeah.
remember just jumping into like leadership mode, like you do this, you got to do that. If we pull this together, blah, blah, if we do ABC, we'll get XYZ type thing. And I remember one of the girls who I think I had a crush on said something like, "You're so serious," and she didn't find it very like, I think she wasn't saying that as a compliment. It was like and I was probably too young to reflect on the second part, but I realized that, oh, yeah, I sort of do take this leadership role, and leadership can be really unpopular, which is a lesson I keep learning through life. Um, and B, and this is more of a later years reflection, there is something that is kind of unsexy about taking charge and being the person who can get shit done. Um, and and that was yeah, that was the moment I discovered that I do both. And
Yeah, I just
to this day, I still know that people look at it and go, "That's not very sexy."
it's so funny. Just a few weeks ago, I got a client that was a new client, and he's running a bank, and he said something very unusual that surprised me. I've never heard it before. So they buy my services because I've got a 5-year plan. I've got a proven innovation method. I've got some things that are interesting, and they're methods, and they're structured somewhat. And he goes, "I want you to do something you've probably never done before." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Look, I know how to get stuff done. I have no problem with that, never have. That's why I'm here and got hired. I just want to do it without being hated this time." So I think that's a common thing. You get
Yeah,
stuff done. People don't
yeah.
love it all the time.
They
It's
don't.
probably who you are.
And
Yeah.
I always treated my band and my crew very well, I think financially and just respectfully in how I spoke and everything. But there is something about being that direction giver that people are behind you about going, "He's he's a bit, anally" sorry, I don't know if we can swear on this, but he's a bit, he's a bit
I'll delete them
OCD
so you
or
don't need to use them.
yeah, but, he's this or he's that or that's strange or blah, blah. But it's because of that that we're able to be able to sit here today and say we did those shows and we had the success that we've had. So, um, yeah, stuff everybody else.
For sure, yeah. And it's you have people that you hire that are exceptional and you can cooperate, and people who are amazing cooperators that are trying to head down the same path and have the same
Mhm.
vision. But those that don't want to run down the path or head in the same direction, it gets a little tight.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, now that I've asked my fan questions and followed up with some fun business, I want to ask you, I want to get to the meat because some people want to hear it right away and then they can leave if they need to. I want to know, of all the things you've learned in your career, all the things in your life, what do you think your number one advice, your number one piece of advice that is the Simon's secret? Is it about the boundaries thing, or is it stay in business? What's number one? Tell me, or tell me both.
Well, yeah, definitely stay in business is, is like the hack that, you can call it a bunch of different things. You can call it,
Yeah, that's code because it means like nothing, right? Stay in
yeah,
business. Okay,
well,
tell us what you mean by it.
well, it's like it's an extreme extension of perseverance. So it's like a
Mm,
at all costs, um, how do you keep going at all costs? And what it really means is, and it more pertains to, and I suppose I'm speaking to a slightly older audience in this answer, and that I'm be targeting folks that are thinking about exits and outcomes and personal wealth creation and things like that. But then that becomes your focus, as it does for a lot of people at a certain point in life when you start to think about those things. Um, Staying in business is the hack that sort of allows you to achieve that outcome. And so, um, ultimately, there are times and challenges in business where walking away almost can feel appealing for a number of reasons. It's have a tricky board dynamic. You might have headwinds that seem insurmountable, or might be challenging such that you're concerned about the impact on your health that it might take, or what have you. And sometimes quitting can feel like the easier path. Stay in business means find a way to stay in business. Now, that doesn't mean put your health second or anything like that. It means find a way to do it sustainably and stay there. It might mean going far deeper in layoffs than you plan on doing. It might mean a pivot. It might mean um, you're selling staplers now when you used to sell, batteries. But whatever it takes, it means keeping the entity going and getting it back to a place where there's a go forward plan, a- and the thing can remain a going concern. And it is, I've done it now so many times when, runways, you're not just at the end of a runway, but it would appear effectively to any ordinary person over. And
Mm-hmm.
through sheer force, I've been able to keep going. And people in my family, friends, I actually see this as a bit of a slur, to be honest, have often said, "Oh, it's what you do. You pull rabbits out of the hat. You'll pull another rabbit out of the hat. You'll do that Josh thing." I think that's horse crap. Um, it's a decision. It's a decision to keep going, even when it feels like it would definitely be easier to walk away. Um, and it's
So it's
sort of
kind of like
related.
a radical determination. Is that the essence of what you're saying? Something like that?
Well, you know what it is an extension of? You've probably heard that old, like, entrepreneurs will work 15 hours a day to avoid working 9 to 5. It's an extension of that joke, but it's an application of that mindset to, the nth degree. But it is a hack that works. It's the same as I found this when I was in the band as well. It's like if you keep going, you obviously, I mean, there's some things we've skipped here, which is you need a quality product, you need intelligent, aligned people working together for a common goal, and those things aren't givens. But if you can get those ingredients in place, the final ingredient that almost guarantees success. Now, success is obviously a subjective word, but eh, some kind of outcome, which I think in and of itself is success, an outcome is success. Um, that final ingredient is just sticking with it. It's perseverance, it's stubbornness, and a hunger to make it work.
Amen. That's an awesome way to put it. It's so general that it begs that there's something underlying it, and you just gave us the secret sauce underneath all of that. Is terrific stuff. So you stated as we were getting to know each other that a person to do so must set clear boundaries on themselves. That's interesting because, like you said, entrepreneurs, leaders, they all want to gain their freedom. So, give us that paradox explanation. Boundaries
Yeah.
on yourself. Tell me about that.
Well, it's boundaries for yourself, right? So,
Mhm.
um, I can only really speak from my own experiences, going through these, those moments where I did have to stay in business and do whatever it takes. But there is that is a slight paradox. Obviously, you sort of do whatever it takes, but at the same time set boundaries. So like an example in my case, was I was really struggling when I just had this company called Vampr, a tech startup that we started in the United States and ultimately brought to Australia. Um, I was struggling with capital raising and the toll that was taking on me. I was a sort of one-man IR team. Didn't even think to call it IR. It was just it was a big part of my job was just constantly raising money, and we never raised enough of it. And it was a huge distraction from working on products and marketing and sales and all the things that really make a business turn. And so then when I sort of successfully pulled off the sale of that to Vinyl Group, the business I now run, um, the one sort of concern I had, as you know, the board contemplated whether I would be the CEO of that business and run things, was I can't get stuck on that capital raising hamster wheel. And you know, the question I had to ask myself is, would I walk away from the entire acquisition and exit scenario if it meant, you know, if the alternative was I had to do this thing I really just sort of fundamentally didn't want to do isolated. And the boundary there was like, this is what I'm not going to do, which is a return to doing this thing that was really taking a toll on my health. But of course, like any, I think, good entrepreneur, I found a way to marry the requirements of the business with my personal boundaries. And where we arrived at was I've now got a really supportive IR team. And the irony is I've actually raised far more money since I set that boundary than I ever did before. Like, I think before that boundary was set, I'd probably raised $5 million, and now it's 35 in aggregate. But
Mm.
I had to set that boundary and that means letting people know. Setting boundaries isn't just a personal deal with yourself. It's also, you crystallize it by expressing that boundary to the folks around you. In my case, it was a board of directors that I was still getting to know. And so you crystallize the boundary, and what it does is it forces the world around you to adapt to your needs. And so then when it was known that, well, this is what he won't do, but we still need capital and we still have to do raisings from time to time, whether it's to support acquisitions or just to provide working capital, or whatever the function. Because you've set that boundary, the world around you adapts. And so that team was put around me, and things sort of start to fall in place. And so again, the hack is like, work out what you need, be reasonable, obviously, listen to your body. Then it's let people know, and then it's watch the world change.
Mm. Excuse me. So let me ask you something about that. You position it as the world has to adapt to you, and that is true. Paradoxically, I think it's also true that by setting that boundary, you forced innovation on people around you. Not that they had to do something in line with you, but you were not available to solve all their problems. So they had to come up with some creativity and some new means than before. And the other thing it did is it forced you to orchestrate many people instead of you being one doing it, because you didn't just
Yeah.
hire one headcount because they couldn't do what you did.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? I got it right?
Well, yeah, I think so. It's like, getting better at delegating however you get there, whether it's through forcing functions like we've sort of just described, or it's being told by a board of directors that you need to delegate more, or someone sort of, a leader or a mentor, calling out an unhealthy process approach, whatever it is. Typically any leader, certainly in my spot, and frankly, leaders of smaller businesses and bigger businesses too, there typically comes a time where the art of learning what you can delegate, why you can delegate it, and who you should delegate it to, becomes an increasingly important part of the job, and a muscle that you need to not just build but refine. And you can get it wrong, like especially when you first start delegating, you do get it wrong, and you work out maybe I'm delegating the wrong tasks, or to the wrong people, or a combination of both. But you do get better at it, like anything, right? You practice it and you're doing it enough, you become second nature. But yeah, I think that answers the question.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Okay, the other thing our audience wants to hear, they want to hear that you're like them. Maybe even you've had more difficult things that you've been able to crawl out of. Because we all have difficult things happen. You just spend enough time on this planet, you don't coast the whole way. So you've had a couple of really bad, difficult things happen to you. Let's talk about the business one first, maybe. Tell me the worst thing that's ever happened to you in business.
I'd say every time we came to the end of the runway before I sold my business to Vinyl was yeah, potentially quite devastating to not just myself but the limited number of shareholders we sort of had in that private business, and there was a, a re-rate of tech stocks in 2022 ish that made it very difficult for us to raise money at previous valuations, and what that meant was we really had to crystallize a paper loss, but a very real one, because folks had bought a percentage of the business at a much higher valuation, and then we were faced with yeah, basically in a position where we had to sell, and so that means, yeah, locking in a loss, of tangible loss. Fortunately, I mean, I did what we talked about before, and I managed to find a solution where I was able to roll over the stock in my entity into another vehicle that had its own challenges. But when you're going into a vehicle with its own challenges, it's a huge upside opportunity, and that's what I saw. And so I was able to turn lemons into lemonade over a number of years. But and I make it sound probably fairly straightforward maybe, but that what I just discussed there is what I've described as a contortionist move, and you have to, I mean, do all sorts of things like unwind cap tables, unwind preference stock deals, um, work out how drag-alongs apply as those consequences trickle through a cap table, and do things cross jurisdiction, um, and the whole time you're doing it, and you're working harder than you've ever worked to get a result where I myself on paper lost 90% of my net worth, and was
Mm,
going into something extremely uncertain. All again probably just sounds like, "Oh, boo-hoo," but, those are some of the most confronting and, quite emotional years, or certainly months, I should say, of my life. And I wouldn't change it for a thing. It's certainly now look where we're at, so you'd have to call it a bet that, well, the the story's not over yet. No, most people who rolled over into that deal still have their stock. So it's a journey that's not over, but, um, it could have been over, and because we were rolling into another, we went from one risk to another risk, just so confronting, because the question you naturally ask yourself is, "Why don't you just go and start something else?" Clean clean cap table, none of the crap you have to worry about the existing guys, like, okay, they probably wouldn't invest in you again, but you're a thrifty guy, you go find other investors, you start something else. It's natural to start thinking like that when you're putting so much effort in to get what feels like a suboptimal outcome in that moment. And like I said, it's turned out to be probably the greatest thing we ever did. And that's just how life goes, right? But
yeah,
yeah, that's right up there.
yeah. Another thing is the whole stay in business idea. Obviously, you lived through that. I think for a younger audience member, they could confuse this as, hey, stay in that crappy job where you make very little and do very little good for people, just because you're there, and you don't mean that, right? You mean something that you have a stake in, some
Yeah,
skin in the game, some
that's right.
ownership,
What I'm
something like
saying really only applies when there's skin in the game. If you're in a bad job that's giving you, existential reflections on a daily basis for months on end, it's probably time to leave that job.
that. And it's time to find a business to stay in
Well,
that you
it's
have a
time to
skin in the game
create.
with.
Well, that's it. It's time to go and create something where you can kind of control your own destiny and create your own wealth. I will say also that starting a business isn't for everyone, and nor should it be. Like, the
No.
world needs really good executors who are more effective at carrying out someone else's vision than rather than being the visionary themselves. So certainly not everyone should be a business owner. And then there's people that just none everything we're talking about here, it just probably doesn't sound very appealing, and that's fair too. It's a lot, you know. And
Yeah.
there's days where I wonder if it's for me.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, though, it's a big planet, as you and I are proving right now, and there are definitely places. Once you live long enough and you've been in a lot of businesses, you see that there are places that will actually give you some skin in the game of one form or another. It could be
Yeah.
straight out ownership, it could be stock options, but it could just be a commission or something. But there's a better place for you if you're in a business where you're just doing a job and you're creating very little value for people. You're just being nice to customers, and
100%.
you hate it. So that's the time you don't stay in business. Stay in business and go find some stake, and then stay in that business. I
That's the
think is what
one.
you're saying.
That's exactly what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Yep.
Yeah. You had a personal challenge that was pretty serious. Tell us about that.
Yeah, going back a bit over a decade now, the band was kind of at a bit of a crossroads. We recorded, we were trying to find the sound of our second album, and I'd moved to London to work with some bigger name producers, and I did what a lot of people who have success in Australia do, and they go, I was able to crack radio, TV, touring in this country of 25 million-ish people, however many people there were at the time. And you go, if you're fortunate like me and you've got a few passports, you go, I want to try this in a bigger market, and it should work, and I should be, in theory, more successful. And what you underestimate is all of the years of network you were building in your original hometown just by virtue of being alive. So, your mum's best friend's cousin happens to be a manager that could give you that first break, whatever it is. And so you move to another place and you don't have any of that roots. You don't have any of those roots or connections. And so it becomes a scarier, more expensive exercise than anyone ever prepares for. Now that was part of it. And then during that
Mm.
time, I got struck down with just an obscure cancer that bit rare and
Mm.
ultimately wasn't life threatening, but I couldn't get a clear diagnosis for about 12 months, and it was super distressing because of that. We knew it was cancer, but we didn't really know what next. It was the NHS, which was really starting, which is the National Health Service in England, was at the start of what's now, it's in a bit of a disastrous state, but that was 10 years ago, which was the beginning of that decline, I suppose. And, it was like a 12-month wait to see a follow-up, specialist to work out what had to happen next. And so then I had to make a hard decision to basically abandon that investment, which was to uproot from Australia, go back to England, and I had to make that move back to Oz. And that really ruined a serious relationship that I was in at the time, and so I was sort
Mm.
of battling with this health thing, not having answers about, prognosis, and then also grappling with the end of the relationship. Great things came from all of that.
Wow.
It inspired our second album, which led to that Keith tour, but it also forced me to take time off, obviously, for I think probably self-evident reasons. And in that time off, I really reflected, and I think quite was able to almost make, in quite an academic way, uh, some judgments on the industry, which on things that I just touched on, like why is it easier to get some success in your hometown versus in a bigger foreign market. And that was actually the seed of what led to Vampr, which is one of our pillars of Vinyl Group, and the company that I founded. And so it was being off work and being sick and kind of displaced and all, between countries for a period there. And the trauma of all of that happening at the same time inspired Vampr, which we founded some 6 months after I sort of got through all that ordeal. And then the band started winding down as Vampr started winding up. And then I was very fortunate to, from the royalties I made on some of the music tours, the bigger ones, I was able to fund my life in America. Well, then I moved to America. I met my now wife, and I was able to live off of those royalties for the first couple of years of building my startup, which most founders don't have the luxury of doing. Most founders, I don't know how they do it. They probably work a part-time job in addition to working on the business, which is what I did in the band days. But I was able to use the money I'd made from the band to pay for life for a couple of years while we tried to make sense of the startup. And here I am today. So again,
so glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you. But it's another example of taking a pretty crappy situation and actually not just surviving it, but actually thriving as a result of it. I think both examples we've talked about are very good lessons in that. One was an existential threat to the business. The other was an existential threat to myself as a human. And in both cases, turned it around and had so many better outcomes in life as a result.
Both of those examples talk about staying in business and your massive determination that you've conquered and created in your life. But I'd be curious about each. What's a different lesson? Like, what's the number two? Like, what lesson did having that cancer situation teach you specifically? Not a big generality, but what tool did you get out of that? And what tool did you get out of losing or almost losing your business so many times, especially that one big one?
I'm not so sure. I mean, appreciation for life, gratitude. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I got tools out of it. I think in those sorts of scenarios, you improvise a lot, and you make decisions, and you'll get some right and you'll get some wrong. But I improvised, and then you can learn a lot in hindsight, right? So you reflect on it and you go, oh, okay, that's probably a good move, or maybe I could have done that better. But I don't.
Gratitude's a huge tool in life and in business for sure.
I think definitely gratitude's got to be right up there. But perseverance, right? I mean, that was the big, just a reminder of how far that can take you. And just an appreciation for the fact that everything you go through is just, another building block for whatever you're about to do next. And always knowing that nothing really matters. There's always just, if you approach everything with enthusiasm, you'll typically have another crack. At any given day, you can wake up, it's a new day, and you can have another crack at being alive and approaching things differently and with a different attitude. And you can reinvent any day. And so this is a bit hippy dippy stuff, but it's all true.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. It's bedrock, and people that ignore it, have a huge opportunity cost. They may never realize that something bad happened because they ignore those big things, but they have an opportunity cost that they never see that is real, just as real.
I think probably the other lesson is you really need to look after your body and self, because you only get one of them.
Yeah.
And I've probably pushed mine harder than most people. And I've really woken up to that in the last few years. But I've also done cooler things than a lot of people. So I don't know what lesson there is in that.
Well, you got to look at your body's not everything, but it is the only thing, right? So you got to take care of your health. So health and gratitude, those are two big things to mention. Before we get into the very end, where we create a 1 week plan for listeners that are in the club, in the premium access club, um, I want to ask you the obvious question that really drew me to you. I have personal reasons in my family and such to ask this, so I saw you and I chased you a bit. And can a really good creator, whether it's singing or some other way, can they make a living doing that if they are strategic and do some of the things you've just said, and or is it just always luck?
No, there's definitely a path to being a middle, let's call it a middle class musician, which we talk about a lot in the industry. Is we want more of that. We actually want a bigger middle class. It's not
Mm.
it's not a good thing that right now you've got people that earn. There's even some billionaires now, but you've got lots of people earning hundreds of millions, plenty of people earning tens of millions. You got almost no one in. You haven't got no one. There's actually quite a. There is a middle class, but we want to see the middle class proliferate. And then you've got many people, probably 95% plus, that earn basically zero. So
Mm.
everything Vinyl Group stands for, which we haven't obviously spent a bit of much time talking about, but
Yeah, let's take
that
some time. Tell us about it,
yeah,
because
so
you're
I mean
passionate
that's
about this.
sure. It's my business. The CEO. It's a public company here in Australia. It's a portfolio company now. In many ways, it's really the simplest way to describe it is there's two divisions. We have a media division that's called Vinyl Media. Then we have a tech platform division, and that owns a whole bunch of music tech brands. But everything we do is about connecting musicians with each other, or with fans, or with brands, and we're trying to I suppose, turn a flywheel where commerce and culture can collide to enrich every participant in that flywheel, um, and that is ultimately the only way to contribute to a healthy and vibrant music industry, is to make sure that every person who is essential to it is winning, and so
Yeah.
that's why we exist. It's it is a slightly tricky thing to describe because it's not a business that you would just go off and start, right? Portfolio companies kind of emerge for various reasons and usually as a result of various mergers and stuff. But we're super passionate about what we do and the corner of the market that we own. Um, and a- and so yeah, just coming back to that, one of the things that and one of our sort of missions there is to see a bigger middle class of music. And that means more people earning, 100 grand a year from doing the things that they love, and being able to choose that as a career path that is credible and not something that a careers counselor is going to laugh off. And that's been a goal of mine forever.
I
so,
love
so
that.
yeah, yeah. And that was a mission of Vampr. Another mission of Vampr's was if we help when we initially raised the seed capital of a few $100,000, our goal was like, if we can transform one person's life, they use our technology to meet someone that they go on to make lots of money with or marry or whatever happens, then it's been worth every dollar, which is probably not what shareholders want to hear, but that was me and my co-founders thought at the time. And we actually ticked that box really quickly. We've now we've created something like over 10 million connections between people who are
Wow.
emerging in the music industry and helped millions of people. So um, we ticked that box relatively early on in the journey, and then we had to set a new goal. And the goal I have now is I want to see, obviously, there's that more persistent, sticky one, which is to help grow the middle class of music, number one. And I'd say the second one is here in Australia, we're the only publicly listed music vehicle. And I want to show that you can do that successfully and inspire at least another business in that space to list here. And we want to see more public companies that pursue the sort of things that we're pursuing, because it brings more attention to it, and it's an effective way to, I think, bring to the mainstream's attention some of the values and visions that we're passionate about. So I think we touched on this in our pre-call, but what's been an interesting feature of my life, only upon reflection really, is that every time I tick off some of those loftier goals or visions, we actually it's really important that you set new ones or update them, because if you don't, that's when you risk coasting. And I'm 35 and I'm too young to coast.
I gotta say, that theme in our pre-call is huge to me. I don't know if you're willing, but I think we should do a second episode. I don't care if it's in 8 months.
Yeah.
Let's do a second episode. Let's just focus all on that. That is a huge, big topic, that whole thing. The other thing, because your time is set and limited today,
Unfortunately, yeah.
I would love it if you'd be willing to have Julie send me your favorite short paragraph about what your business does, so that I get it right in the description.
Sure.
And then also your specific links where people can find you.
Yeah.
Because I would love to find you everywhere, and I found some of it, but some of it I didn't.
Yeah, I think
because it is a portfolio.
Yeah, we've got.
Let's do that.
Sorry, you go.
No, I was just gonna say, let's do it that way, and we don't have to talk about it right now. Is
Sure.
that all right?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's start a premium action plan. Before we execute our premium action plan, I just want to thank you for fueling this movement on behalf of others. If you haven't yet, give the gift of premium at boldencounters.tv. It's the fastest, easiest gift you'll ever give, and it thrills the people who get it. They too get action plans every single week with experts and their very own breakthroughs. Give the gift of premium to someone you care about. Just go to boldencounters.tv. It takes just seconds. And pass that spark on to someone else. Thank you. Even great leaders get stuck. Others thrive. I'm Mark Cook, New York Times bestselling author, president of Windfall Partners. We get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. Clients upgrade leaders' retreats and conferences with my 5-star keynotes and breakouts on Leaders Bold Encounters. Also, leaders get weekly consulting as they execute key steps. Plus, brief check-ins guarantee results, live or via Zoom. After turnarounds as chief executive and 9 global studies of 2 million award-winning leaders, I've coached 4,000 client wins at top brands with my approach in over 50 cities worldwide. My Bold Encounters is an advanced system for leading. First, powerful steps on a path forward. Second, problem-solving skills that beat obstacles fast. Leaders create revenue breakthroughs and clients see new profits. Now let's lead with Bold Encounters today.